A prerequisite for understanding Act 2 of Franny and Zooey, the conversation between Zooey and Bessie, we must understand the letter between Buddy and Zooey that Zooey is reading in the bathtub before Bessie barges in. There are 7 pretty much major topics in this letter. Topic number 1 is the subject of the phone. So Buddy reports that Bessie tells him that it's crazy to keep a phone in the apartment and not have one in the little out of nowhere cottage with no electricity that he's staying at. And Buddy defends himself against Bessie's accusation that it's stupid to pay for something that you don't use by saying that it's a token, it's a symbol of his independence. It was the only thing that was his and Seymour's back when he lived in the apartment in Manhattan. And secondarily, and I think the real reason, is Buddy feels a great delight in going through the phone book, through the G section, and finding the glasses and seeing Seymour's name still there. So it's a way of it's a token of keeping Seymour alive. And so that phone will play into Act 3 of this novel. But for right now, we're reminded that there is indeed a phone line of Seymour and Buddy's still in the apartment. That is not the other phone line that the normal calls come through. Number 2, he addresses the idea of a formal education. And it's interesting because Lane and Franny discussed formal education, and neither of their takes on formal education are really reflected in Buddy's advice to Zooey. And what he's really talking about is not whether people are phony or whether they're poets because they're published or poets because they're beautiful. Remember Lane and Franny's criticisms or praise of poets who are professors. Rather, his is more of a practical idea, and that is, do you want to pursue years and years of education just to have something to fall back on when your acting career doesn't pan out? And Buddy basically says, for the normal person, that does seem like a decent, sort of an everyman kind of idea to follow, that you always have a college degree or a master's to fall back on. But in Zooey's case, he already has a master's and he's born to act. And so in his case, at least, having a formal education is a little bit overrated. And as we'll see a little bit later, might even be more harm than that. So besides the phone and formal education, he gets to the idea of acting. Acting, again, was a topic of conversation between Lane and Zooey, but this time Zooey and Buddy seem to have a very similar idea of acting. So it doesn't seem at all like Zooey thinks that Buddy thinks that Zooey should quit acting. In fact, he thinks that he was born to act, and so he should live out what he was born to do. So neither of them seem at all concerned about phoniness, but rather Buddy again brings up this idea of beauty. And so in describing his brother Zooey, he calls him a nearly wholly beautiful face, and he says that when you act, have you ever really seen a truly beautiful rendition of Chekhov's Cherry Orchard? Not good, not inspired, not smart, not competent, but have you ever seen a beautiful rendition of Cherry Orchard? So what he's saying is, Zooey, I know you share Franny's, and this is a little anachronistic because I'm saying this out of order, but what Buddy is saying is, Zooey, you share Franny's concern that if you're going to pursue poetry, if you're going to pursue acting and drama, then you're going to have to hold it to its highest standard, which is something truly beautiful. So the education that's a safety net, that's no longer under you, and you're going to put all the chips in the center of the table for acting. But if you do that, remember that for us, for the Glass family, for us family of geniuses, the threshold that we're trying to get through, the rubric, requires absolute beauty. So just know that you're not going to be happy unless you reach that rare plateau of achieving beauty in your acting. Then he says that at the college, he's no longer working there 4 days a week, but rather 5 days a week, because he's lecturing to the faculty and their spouses on Zen Buddhism. And that Zen Buddhism that Buddy is lecturing the faculty and their spouses on Friday night will play later in the education of Franny and Zooey and in the conversation between Franny and Zooey of Act 3 of this novel. So besides the phone, formal education, acting, Zen Buddhism, fifthly, Buddy tells the story of I don't know if he's at a deli or the butcher, the supermarket, whatever section where you go to buy a lamb chop, and he sees a 4-year-old girl leaning up against the glass, and he says that she's pretty and that she probably has a boyfriend, and she says no, she has 2 boyfriends, and she names them, and one is a boy and one is a girl. And this makes Buddy want to run home and fire off a letter to Zooey, but instead he waits and he gets his meat and he gets all the way home, and he waits too long to tell what he was inspired to do. And so this little girl naming both a boy and a girl as her boyfriend reminds him of a quote that Seymour once said on a crosstown bus there in Manhattan. And he said that the goal of all religion is unlearning the differences and all the differences, and one of the differences is, of course, gender. And so this could not be more down the center of the plate of a Salinger theme. All throughout Salinger's best work, you have a really innocent child being the wisest of all people, because they're the exact opposite of what Franny hates and of what Holden Caulfield hates, which is phonies. And children just say the truth. They're not double, they're singular. And so the innocence of a child is one of the greatest ideals of the Glass family and J.D. Salinger as a real person. Besides the phone, the formal education, the acting, the Zen Buddhism, the 4-year-old girl at the butcher lamb chop steak, number 6 topic of the letter between Buddy and Zooey is the topic of Seymour, and Buddy is finally able to talk now that it's been 7 years. Now he's able to talk about the suicide, and so he talks about flying down to Florida and crying for 5 hours. And then right when he's landing, he overhears a conversation about the dear little thing. They took a pint of pus from her little body, and that is such a Seymour thing to laugh at that he gets off the plane with a smile or a grin on his face, and he sees Seymour's widow, and he looks all wrong because he's been crying for 5 hours, but at just the wrong moment, he smiles. Then he reports that Seymour had a haiku written on the notepad of the hotel where he committed suicide. And what's the haiku about? It's a child on the plane, just like the child at the butcher counter, just like all the innocent children of all of Salinger's novel. And frankly, even the underage women in Salinger's personal life as well. So this all leads to the paradoxical oxymoronic aspect of the psychology of the Glass family. That Seymour commits suicide out of all 7 children, and yet he is the most revered, the most respected. His opinion on everything by far holds the most weight among the 5 surviving siblings, and that is perhaps surprising. And then number 7, they get to not the same as number 2, but a informal education, or as we could say, a homeschool, where it seems like Seymour and Buddy took the responsibility from education of the outside education in school, even took the reins from Les and Bessie, and took more than they did the other kids, took Franny and Zooey under their wings and maybe overloaded them, maybe overburdened them, maybe put too much on them as little children, especially if both of them are going to turn out to be actors and actress. And so Buddy says, I want to provide a little defense, and that is that Zooey, you're a genius and you would have been overburdened anyway. So we tried to get ahead of the story. We tried to be proactive by educating you in the way that we did. And so it might be better for an actor not to have all the burden that comes with knowledge. But since you're a genius, we would have had to have done it anyway. So it was better to get out ahead of your education rather than just react to it. And so that is sort of Buddy's defense of the way that Seymour and he basically ruined Franny and Zooey. And maybe I'm guessing, maybe that's exactly why Zooey is rereading this 4-year-old letter, because maybe he's thinking of this letter in light of Franny's breakdown and her existential crisis. So now, with this prerequisite, I think now we're ready to have a fuller understanding of Act 2, the conversation between Zooey and Bessie.